good morning. And the focus for the first hour today is going to be on the tiles and positions module for your LSM 980. We're going to take a little break after that. We are going to switch over to doing area scan and multiplexing, and then we had already done a lot of spectral yesterday, so we might kind of chat collectively about what we want to do with that time that we devoted to that today. And then we have more time basically for working with everybody's samples and just making sure that while I'm here, you can get the most out of the system and that we can build configurations that are relevant to your workflows. So again, yesterday what we had covered was sort of the hardware basics. We covered some of the locate tab, the acquisition. We did some confocal imaging, sort of the basics of acquiring and optimizing an image. We looked into a little bit of the multidimensionality, including time series and Z-stack, but we didn't really go further than that. And I left tiles as a specific topic for today. And especially, we're going to talk about tiles in the context of pairing it with focus strategies like the definite focus cover slip finder that you have, and like software autofocus and the support points that are built in to the tiling software. And so between those three, you have very flexible focus strategies that allow you to deal with samples that aren't flat, that allow you to deal with samples that drift in terms of focus over time. And so that's hopefully going to be the point of the discussion today. So I guess to step back and talk about the tiles window in general, especially for anyone who's worked with Zen software before, if you've worked with Zen Black or with an earlier version of Zen Blue, one of the most important points that I can make up front is that you'll notice that over here on the left-hand side, if everyone can see my screen okay, is that there's only a single box for tiles. So we have Z-stack tiles and time series. There's no positions. And that's because Zen Blue is incredibly flexible in terms of working with tiles and positions. And really, a position is considered in Blue to be nothing more than a 1x1 tile, which is nice. In Black, if anyone has done this before, if you did 10 different positions and you wanted to do tiles, you would have to do the same tile at the same type of tile at every single position. So it was quick and helpful, but it wasn't very flexible. So here, what we can do is we have both tiles. We also have positions. We can mix and match these to our heart's content. And so across a sample, we could be doing some positions in one place. We could be doing very different tiles in a lot of different places. And really where this is especially helpful is where you're dealing with slides that maybe have serial sections where every sample is different, or where you're dealing with multi-well trays or just Petri dishes, generally samples that have different structures that you want to be able to identify. Let's say worms in a dish or larvae in a dish or something like that. They might be different orientations, and it kind of takes time that you don't need to be able to just do a giant box that works for everything. So it's a lot more flexible in that respect. The other thing that I'll say about the tiling here is that in Blue, you have the ability to produce what are called support points. And so again, if you have a cover slip that isn't flat, or if you have a sample where the section isn't flat, or your explant isn't flat, whatever it happens to be, you can generate these support points that are associated with every tile that you create that are going to allow you to basically roll with your sample. And I can't tell you how many years of my life I've wasted over bracketing Z-stacks to be able to deal with samples that aren't flat and collecting a lot of black slices, a lot of empty space. It is so much better being able to do it this way. And so that's going to be part of our discussion as we go. And then I realize also that there are a lot of different groups here that are working and pushing towards and developing assays that involve multi-well plates. And so the third thing that we can do with this is, in addition to tiles, in addition to positions, we have basically the ability to develop, design, and work with different sample carriers here as well. And so This is going to be a critical part of the morning session. And honestly, we're going to see how we do for time, because an hour might not be enough time to cover everything. If it is not, then we might take the spectral portion that we planned from 2 to 3 today and just do a little bit more tiling and positions. So just fair warning that you might have to stick around for the afternoon if this is the only thing you wanted to see. All right, so the tiles window, when you open it up to begin with, you see that it's relatively straightforward, and especially if I don't show everything, I really just see tiles and positions. It's very clean, but there's a lot going on that you can work with and interact with. So if I show everything here, then you end up being able to work with different sample carriers. You have the ability to work with these support points that I mentioned, and you have access to the options that are critical when you're setting up tiles especially. So you can choose in the options things like overlap, you can choose how you are traveling, and whether or not you split things into separate files, also whether or not you move your focus to a load position between different regions. So all of these are helpful things. We're going to come back to those later, but I just want to point out up front this options tab because you know, as you're setting up your experiment, it's critical, and especially to work with the core to make sure that you've got settings ideal for your sample. You'll notice that most of this stuff is grayed out though. So we have this entire tile region. I can't verify anything. I can't add anything. I can't delete anything. I have this position list. I can't do anything here either. Everything is grayed out. And the reason is that basically everything is really geared towards doing things in a tile interface in this viewer. So this is the advanced setup window. You'll notice that at the moment we have a live window. And if I click on show viewer, then this is going to open up a new window, which is basically going to be my map for my sample. So, and you can see actually that it actually thinks I have a carrier apparently. So it thinks that I have a slide or a petri dish here. So we're gonna work with that in a second. There we go. There it is. So it generates a little overview of what it thinks your slide is. It also gives you the ability now here to work with these different buttons and tools to generate the regions that you're interested in. And so just to show you a couple of quick things about navigating in this up front, you'll notice that in this tiles setup, we have a couple of new tabs underneath here, and this tiles window is critical to work with. You can see that we can center to stage position, and you can see that we can decide how we want to show our live window. And so live window, the way that it's set up here, if I click on live right now, you're going to see that it's going to give me a separate window, but then I have to toggle back and forth between these two as I'm working with it. Now, if I instead show my live window in the tiles view like so, then it's not going to toggle me back and forth, and it's only going to show me my live window within this tool, within the tiles tab. That can be helpful, but I have to say my favorite way of doing this is to use it in a separate container. And this is going to basically let me show side by side my live window plus a little preview here. And this is really nice because then I have access to all of the different focus tools that I showed you yesterday. I have access to all of the double clicking and the edges that I showed you yesterday as well. So the navigation tools in live are fully available. And also I can make big jumps here by just double clicking around the stage area. So I can make jumps in the tiles window as well, which is, I find, really quite a nice way to transition between the two. The other thing to mention is that the center to stage position is your lifesaver when you need it. And the reason that I say that is because as you are scrolling to zoom in and out of this window, it basically centers on where your mouse is. So if I'm not careful, I'm going to end up zooming into totally the wrong spot, and I'm not going to know where I am, and it's going to be very difficult unless I want to scroll all the way back out again and then back in to be able to find where I am. So if I center to stage position, no matter what zoom I'm in, it's going to move me to this little blue square, and this is literally where I am, where my stage position is focused or is located at the moment. I can work with these little arrows here to click things back and forth. You can jump basically a full field if you wanted to. But again, we can just do that over here in the live view. And you can double click here to be able to make big jumps, which I think is really quite helpful. So lots of different ways you can navigate. Highly recommend, after using this for quite some time, that separate container and using this when you need it to bail you out is very, very helpful. All right. So are there any questions so far about that? I know it's pretty straightforward, I hope. There are, we've changed the way that we do the button interface quite a bit. And at the moment, what we've done is to basically arrange all of the tools that you need along the left-hand side. And this basically eliminated a whole series of tabs that we had along the bottom that were a little bit cumbersome to navigate and didn't make it easy to access along with these other tools that you need. And so in essence, what we have is a list of different options along the left-hand side, and depending on which option you choose, you see that that activates along the top the tools that you're really going to use. And so I have the ability to preview scan. We're going to do that right away. I have the ability to do 3 different flavors of working with tiles. And I have the ability to work with positions down here as well. And basically each one of these changes the interface at the top, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to skip preview for now. I'm going to jump to working with the tiles for the moment. And the first tool that we have is kind of like our generic old-fashioned straight up, I want to do a 3x3 square or circle, and I want it to be a certain number of tiles, or I want it to be a certain dimension instead. You can also choose whether or not the place that you set it is the center or the top left or the bottom right, which is what you see right here. And really all I need to do is either where I am, click add tile region, or I can use this tool here to just add it wherever I click. And if I keep that tool, then I can just keep on doing that till the cows come home. All right, so it's a pretty straightforward interface, this one. It's really just, I want a square or a circle. I want to either add it where I am, like so, or I want to do it wherever I click. So you can have already a low mag overview, for example. Let's say I collected a larger montage with the 5X, and then I see the spots that I want to work with, and then I can just add tiles quickly. And maybe let's do that, right? So if I wanted to add a tile region here, let's say that I want to do something like a circle, based on the fact that my sample here is this circular cross section through a stem of a plant. So I'll put this roughly in the middle. I will tell it that I want to do a circle. I'm guessing about 3x3 is probably going to be good. Let's add that tile region. And let's do a preview scan. So the preview scan is going to use the tiles that I've just created. And if I hit start, it's going to use my experiment settings. So all of my settings here, all of my settings here. And if I want to do this quickly, maybe I just want to do this fast. So we're going to max it out. We're not going to do any averaging. And let's try doing that preview scan. All right, pretty good. Actually, not too far off. So this is kind of how you can work with these, and this is how you can work with either tiles or positions to generate a preview like this. And so now the whole point of this interface is that I have this nice view that I can work with. And from here, if I decide, for example, that I want to change my objective, or if I want to move to other positions and check things out, then I can leave a footprint and leave a map of the things that I've collected so far. Now, you'll notice that when I changed objectives, that it also changed the scaling on the tile region as well. So my area is the same, but now I'm collecting many more tiles because my objective has a smaller field of view. And so the tiling window definitely keeps up with you when you make these changes so that you can adapt to different objectives as you're working with this. And let's just check our sample view right here. I need to spend a minute with your park locality over lunch, make sure that we've got that set up nicely. That should have been right. I was on the 10, so definitely it should not be that different. Yeah.
5x, yeah.
Yeah, 5 I could imagine, but this one should be better. So I will fix that for you.
Cool.
So sensitive, so nice, good. I mean, it's a blazing signal, but anyway. All right, so as you can see, basically what I've done is I've created a low mag overview here with the 10x, and now no matter what objective I go to, if it's the 63, if it's the 25, if it's the 20 here, I can basically jump around, and I can use this as kind of like my Google map to be able to navigate and find different spots that I'm interested in. And so from here, this can be quite helpful because, oops, not that one. You need to remember to activate the right window here. Jeez, so sensitive. Very nice. So we can basically jump around and look for different spots. So let's do that as we start to collect our as we look at different types of tile regions as well. All right. So to continue our tour of the tile regions, hopefully this one seems relatively straightforward. If you have questions, please just let me know. Where we really get into more powerful and flexible ones is with the next tool that we have right underneath. And this is basically where we can draw whatever we want. And so let's say, I'm going to zoom this in so that it looks like we're dealing with a smaller area, something like that. There we go. And when we're working with this tool, basically what we can do is we can draw anything we want. So it's not just a set size. I can basically just left click and drag and let go, and it's going to create that rectangle that I want. Likewise with an ellipse as well. So whatever region I want to drag to create, I can do. And this is one that I was showing yesterday, I think in the morning, because someone had a question about it, which is that if I wanted to, I can get very specific and I can use this pencil tool and I can draw exactly the region that I want. Let's say I want to get this region and this region right here. So I can draw exactly that when I want to, and then let go, and right click. No matter where I am, I can right click and it'll close the entire area for me. Now, keep in mind that it's only going to do the squares that the scan is. So I can take a lot of time to do that, but it's really just going to give me whatever squares it takes to encompass that area. Now, the other thing I think that I showed yesterday was I can do the most complicated shape here if I want to. But the problem is if I screw something up, if I accidentally click here and I want to get rid of that, I could edit points by right clicking on the object and going here, but there's a lot of points and there's no way I'm going to drag all of these to try to fix it. So I've found generally that a better way to work with this tool is not to hold down the mouse button, but just to click at different corners of your object, like so. And then when you're finished, if you need to make a change, you can right click, you can hit edit points, and you can then just have a few of these that you need to drag around. You can even add points if you want to by clicking on the line. So this gives you a lot of flexibility to work with just by doing the pen tool idea versus the pencil tool, okay? And that's basically it for this. It's very straightforward. These are the 3 or 4 tools that you have. You can keep this if you want to keep on doing regions like so. So it's very fast, I think, to set all of these different positions up. All right. Another way that we have is to basically set up different positions, whether we're doing a rectangular shape or a circle or a polygon. And for anyone who's done this in Zen Black before, the interface is a little bit different, but this is going to feel very reminiscent to setting up either bounding grid or convex hull in Zen Black, where basically you move the stage to a position that you want as a corner, and then you can click add, and then you can move somewhere else, click add, and move somewhere else, click add. and you're effectively designing the stake points that you want to end up using for this. And by the time you're done, you basically have an object that is the size that you're looking for. And so you are probably not going to be doing this in an overview like this, but what you're, oops, well, I just lost my overview. But what you're more likely to do is to, I should have clicked done and then clicked the object and then deleted that. I don't think I can undo any of that. Oh, maybe I can. Nope. Bummer. Let's do that again, shall we? We're going to zoom out as low as we can go. We can just do this with the 20x, I suppose. Let us get that back. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do it with the tool that I'm talking about. So because I lost that, probably the way that you're going to use this is you're going to be working in the live view, and you might go to one of these corners, and then you might end up, we want to do a circle. I'm going to add that as a point. And from here, I can basically double click around. I can go to, let's say, this and set that as another point. I can double click over here, need to go a little bit higher. And set that as another point. And from here, it looks like it's probably just about got it. If I go over here, I need to go a little bit further. There we go. So I can add those as all my points. And you can imagine that if you were doing this with something like a, very, very oddly shaped brain slice or embryo or something like that, this is a very nice way to kind of click around the edges as you're in live view and to basically find those objects. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to leave you a couple of buttons here that would allow you to actually do this through the eyepieces, so that if you prefer to do this with your eyes on the eyepiece and one hand on the mouse, you can actually do it very quickly with the joystick in that as well. Because I'm clicking around through the software just because everyone's on Zoom, but don't forget that I could be moving the joystick here instead. And that can be a very fast way to navigate for everyone who's more familiar with doing things that way. So I'm going to open up my pinhole a little bit here so I get a bit more signal and my focus is a little thicker. And again, with this new region, I can basically go to my preview scan and let's just create that again. Oops, went a little bit overkill, I guess. You can see the contour points of the X's right here. And I did go a little bit too much, but hopefully you get the idea. Does that make sense? There we go. Once I'm done with that, I can get rid of this tile window, tile region if I want to. It's also worth mentioning that this exists in the tile interface that I have here as well. So all of these tiles and everything that I've created, you actually do see that they populate here. And once I have tile regions that I've created within the tile advanced setup window, then all of these functions become activated and I can start to interact with this tool window that I have on the left-hand side. Okay. So let's just delete that, not my image. And I guess, so that kind of shows you the set regions, that shows you the creative regions, that shows you the bounding grid. The other one that we can work with is for carriers. And this is one that I think I'm going to leave until we get to the multi-well plate, because it's incredibly powerful, but with a single image here, it's not going to look that exciting. I can tell you that for sure. So let's wait till we get the multi-well plate, and then we'll spend a lot of time working with carriers basically from start to finish. All right. We also have positions here as well. And so the positions are very similar to what we can do with the first tile region that we had. So we still have the arrow and the plus. We still have the add position ability here. And so for add position, I could be in a spot, and better yet, I could check to make sure that I'm in proper focus. And then I can add a position here and I can run to a bunch of different spots. Let's say I want this one as well. Check my focus, add that position, jump to another position, check my focus, add that position, and you can just keep on going like that. So that's a very nice, easy way to go. If you, and again, with the position list, you can see those all populating here under the tool window as well, all right? Now, if I get rid of these, and let's just shift select all of them and just hit delete. The other way that I can use this is with this little plus tool. And so if I want to just very quickly go and click, 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 you can generate a number of positions very fast. One other thing that I can do with these is if I've done this and if I want to go back afterwards and just verify that the focus position is right, because it looks like this one might be a little bit out, you can see that all of these are the same Z value that I had for where I was located in the first place, but I can actually verify these as well. And so if I click on this little verify tab, then it's going to open up a window here that allows me to move to the current point, which is apparently going to be P2. So it's organizing these from top to bottom. P1 was right here, and it's organizing these top to bottom like so. And so from here, I can then set the Z and move to the next. And so now I can very quickly through this window, again, just jump from one to the next. I can check my focus. To be perfectly honest, when I'm doing this, I like to have one hand on the manual focus knob and then just hover my mouse right here. And then you can really quickly focus with one hand, set Z, move to next, focus again, set Z and move to next. Very fast to set this up. And this one was a little bit off, it looks like. So there we go. Okay, once we're done, it tells us that all points have been verified. And we can close this window, stop our live scan, and we're basically ready to image. I'm going to keep these here. I'm actually just going to uncheck them for the moment so that they don't clutter up my map. And I'll show you the last one that we're going to do because this other one is carriers that we're going to save for later also. So this is just position arrays. And the way that this works is, let's say that I just want to kind of randomly sample things in the middle of my sample here. So I can draw a circle, for example, and I'm just going to distribute a number of different positions. So let's say that I want to do maybe 9 different positions. And I can draw my circular region. And it randomly assigned positions all the way through this. Okay, not the best job of distribution, but here we are.
Can you re-randomize?
You would have to redraw,
Okay.
actually, yeah, unfortunately. So I can delete this again, but that being said, yeah, I think you'd have to redraw. So the other thing, let's try this actually. So rather than randomizing, I can uncheck this and we can try this one more time, like so. And you can see that it just kind of evenly spaces these as well as it can. So that's the other way that we can do this. Let's try to copy this. And let's see if I delete it. Didn't really need to delete it, but let's say if I randomize, you can also bias. And so you can move things more towards the center, more towards the edge. Let's see when I paste. Yeah, it still is the same. So then we'd have to redraw to change the distribution. So there we are randomized closer to the edge. So this can be really nice if you're working with Petri dishes or if you're working with samples where you just want to randomly sample. The biasing is nice if you happen to know that your cells settle or grow more in the middle or around the edges, for example. And that's basically the idea behind this tool. So whether you're working with squares or circles, it's designed to be pretty easy to lay these things out. The grid here would give you a certain amount of overlap. So if we're doing 0% overlap, then if I draw this circle, it's actually going to give me 100% positions. So this is actually a nice way to do a tile where everything is separated. Not the way you'll always use it, but kind of nice to do. You can also do a little bit of overlap if you wanted to as well, but better yet, you can actually do no overlap. So if I want to do, I think you can go up to 100%, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So you can go up to 100%. And if I draw this tool, it's basically going to give me a grid of different positions that are spaced one position away. So if this kind of very uniform distribution is helpful, then this can be a nice way to move your positions around. And you'll notice that these positions that I'm creating, they don't exist on this single position list, but they do exist in this position array. And then from here, because these all might be in different focal positions, I can verify those focuses as well. And these are all grouped under this one specific area. Does that make sense? Okay. Silence means yes today for now. So let's do something else. I will all right, so I'm going to do an outline of this region again, and we're going to do a tile. So I'm going to go to this one. Again, we can just draw a tile region around this entire thing. And the other thing that I want to show you here is what I was talking about in terms of different support points. And maybe I'm actually gonna stretch this out a little bit so that we take up the entire thing, because I think these edges are a little bit less flat than the center region that we're looking at. All right. Yeah, I'll keep it kind of here. Maybe let's do like 1.5, just in case we decide to actually image this. And the other thing that I want to show you is that for something like this, if we're dealing with the tile region where we know that the tissue or the cover slip is not flat, then this is where I can basically bring out the focus points that I had mentioned earlier. And so I have my tile region selected. You can see that here. And I can select it either on the image or I can select it on the tile tool window. And this is where I can add different support points for this. So I can either add them independently where I am or at the center of the region, or I can generate, let's say, like a 4x4 distribution of these points. And if I click distribute here, you can see that it gives me a nice regular array of all of these support points. And the idea behind these is that for a large tile region, you don't want to be stuck having to figure out the focus for every single position in the tile. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to represent the contour of your tissue with just these few support points. So rather than do what in this case would be 88 tiles, we're doing 12 support points. With these support points, if I don't deselect the tile region, I'm just going to move the entire thing around. If I deselect the tile region, and if I'm good with my mouse, then you can select these individually and you can move them around. Oh, it's killing me. The other thing that you can do is you can add them where you are. So if I didn't like these ones, I could just go in and delete some. All right. All right, I'm gonna have to work on that. I used to be really good. So I'll make sure that I can show you how easy that is when we actually get there. But the other thing that we can do is we can add them where we are. So if you know that there's a certain spot that's a high or a low, you can add these at those points on the tissue, all right? And you can see that we can move to all of these different positions if we wanted to as well. The other thing that we can do is verify the same way that we did with our tiles and with our positions as well. And so before I do that, I'm going to take a look at the number of support points that I have. I'm going to make sure that I'm happy with the type of algorithm that I'm using for this to calculate what's happening in between these points. And so you can see here that if we just have a single point, this would be a horizontal plane. We're not really doing anything in that case. If I have 4 support points, between 4 and 9 points, then I would be doing basically just linear interpolation between everything, a straight line between the different focal points for all of the tiles in between the two. And then we can do these more complicated ones that are, the best way I can describe these are kind of like working with a French curve, if anyone's ever done architecture or drafting, to be able to come up with the best position between each one of these. So in this case, we have 12. I'll do the at least 9 support points here. And the last thing that I need to do is verify. So if I'm going to verify these points, I'm going to click on this. You'll notice that it gives me exactly the same kind of window that we had before. So again, I can go to live and I can make sure that I move to our current point. And now I can set Z and move to next. And again, the easiest thing to do is just to have one hand on the mouse, one hand hovering over set Z and move to next. And we can do this like so. So hopefully that looks pretty easy. And I will mention, and we're done basically, so I can turn off the live view. I will mention that technically, if you wanted to, you can use instead one of our focus strategies here. But honestly, I truly find it faster. It would be automated in that case, and certainly doing it with definite focus can help. But I truly find it faster to do it just manually because it's very quick to be able to run through and do this. So now that we've got that done, you can see that each one of these different support points has this slightly different position, this slightly different Z position to it. And so that is going to define the contours of our sample. Now you can imagine if you think about a piece of crispy bacon from the side, if you think about this thing that is sort of a sine wave in shape, you can imagine that if all of these support points were right in the middle of the height of that you wouldn't really be doing anything, right? You'd basically be creating support points that just find the middle of your sample. They don't find the highs and the lows. So I guess the point that I'm making is that there's a little bit of an art to picking support points that are going to represent the highs and the lows of your tissue. So you know, you'll get, as you get practice with this, it becomes very easy to find those, I think. Okay. For all of these, for the support points, for the tiles, for the positions, I think another important thing to mention is that if you are integrating this and combining it with Z-stacks, that just like we talked about yesterday, when we were doing Z-stacks, it is important to remember that for these regions, the position that matters is the center. So we can go here to one side, we can go here to the other side, we can move to the center, and that would be what I would want to set for my position and for my support points as well. And if you're going to do it this way, so let me show you just one extra step, and let me begin by backing up and saying, you know, what have we done so far to set this up? Because I've talked for a while, it's starting to seem like it's a lot of work, but really what we've done is we have opened our advanced window, we have generated a quick preview scan, we have created a tile region that we want to image, we've laid out support points, and now we're at the point where we need to verify them with the Z-stack. So we've really only done, you know, 4 or 5 what are going to feel like very quick things once you actually get used to doing this on your own. So if I come back here and if I go to verify, here's this list of support points again. I can double click to move back up to this one. And if you're working with the sample where you know that the thickness is the same, and if you're able to find the center just by focusing yourself, then you don't even need to worry about, you don't need to worry about the Z-stack. You just hit set Z and move to next, and life is easy. Personally, I never get to work with samples that are that easy. They're variable thickness, or it's tough to convince myself that I know where the center is. And so in those situations, The quickest way that I've been able to come up with doing this is to work with this interface. We're going to go to live. Again, I can move to one side, set first, move to the other side, set last, move to center, set Z and move to next. Let's move this a little bit closer. Move to one side, set first, move to the other side, set last, move to center, set Z and move to next. Move to one side, you get the idea. Set first, move to the other side, set last, move to center, set Z and move to next, move to one side, set first, move to the other side, set next. So clearly, especially when you're doing this, you don't want to overdo it with the support points if you don't have to. This does take a little bit longer to run through, but it's going to be very accurate. And the other thing that I should mention is that as I'm doing this, I'm paying attention to the number of slices that I have each time I do this. So again, move to center, set Z and move to next, move to one side, set first, move to the other side, set last. This is 18 slices, set Z and move to next. And we keep on doing that throughout the entire thing. Now, and let's maybe do one more. All right, good. And so I'll set Z and move to next. So we would basically do this for all of these different tile regions as well. Now, at the end of it, I'm going to remember that the largest number of slices that I had, the thickest region that I was working with was 18 slices. So we can have this really flexible support map. We can have these really variable tile regions, but we're always going to use the same number of Z slices across the entire thing. So I want to make sure that I capture everything. I'm just going to type in 18 and I'm ready to go. That's all I need to do. Once I've done this, we just hit start experiment and it'll go through and it'll collect the entire tile region with this Z stack set up the way that I want it to be. Does this make sense to everybody? Does anybody need to do this? I guess number one is a good question. All right. If no one really, I mean, if no one's really doing it, I don't have to scan through this entire thing to show you, but I think you get the sense that it's basically working with all of the regions that we've, it's collecting the tile region that we wanted. It's using the support points to basically build a support map or a focus map to allow us to follow the contours of the sample, right? This can be helpful with anything from organoids to embryos to sections. So I used to do tissue explants where we were looking at the flat surface. It was very helpful for those because it was never flat. And so all of these situations, it can be quite helpful. And again, at the core of what we just did, we used a low mag, we created a preview, we drew the region that we wanted, we laid down support points, we verified the Z position of those support points, and then we started our experiment. That's all there is to it.
That's good.
All right. That's the basics, I would say. And so the only other thing that I'll mention, I suppose, is this might be a good time. Well, let's see, what time are we at? 10, wow, we're already at 10:14. It might make more sense to talk about a couple of other focus strategies here. And I think we might do carriers this afternoon, even though we have this one that we should put in the fridge, right? Sort of. Okay, we can do that after we're done the focus maps like we were going to anyway, I guess. All right, so we'll save carriers for this afternoon because I think that is a bit of a longer conversation and we technically have 15 minutes before the end of this. So what I'm going to do instead is we're going to wrap this up just by talking about how this integrates with the other different focus options that I have available. And so tiles and positions especially is built to be integrated with different focus strategies, okay? And there is now an easy button that says optimize this focus strategy. We're going to talk about that in a bit, but what you're going to notice is that this does give you basically a default. As soon as I have tiles activated, it assumes that I'm probably going to want to use the Z positions that I ask for in tiles or the support points that I create in tiles. And so the default is always going to move you to using Z positions here. And probably that's what we want. If you're working with something like a cover slip, you could actually just say, I want to use definite focus, and I always want to be the same distance off the cover slip, even if it's tilted. And then you can basically ask it to, if we go to expert mode, standard is just going to do sort of the default that you see here anyway. But if I'm doing a large tile region, I can tell it that for every single tile in the region, I want to be able to activate definite focus, find the focus of my cover slip, and then use the offset to find my cells and do that at every single position. So this is a very fast, automated way to work with cells in a dish or in a multi-well plate. And it's a very good strategy to work with for that kind of application. And hopefully, as I'm talking about this, you get the sense that there are a lot of different types of strategies that we can work with depending on the application that you have in mind. And so definite focus is one option we have. We could do nothing. That's usually not a good idea. But we can either do the Z values, or we can do software autofocus or definite focus, or some kind of combination of these. Even if we're using the Z values that are associated with the support points that I just created, I can actually adapt these as well. So if I want to, I can tell it that I want to adapt these using something like software autofocus or definite focus for each one of the tiles or regions or something else. These kinds of, this kind of setting, let's talk about when these are useful, basically. Let's back up and do one by one, and then I'll talk about this more combination type thing. Something like Z values from the positions hopefully is obvious when you'd want to use it. It's when we're doing these kinds of tiles that we've just been working on for the last 45 minutes, or doing multi-positions and you just want to set it up and go. Software autofocus is going to use the settings that you have for software autofocus down here, either searching for intensity or searching for a reflection. Usually you'll be doing intensity and using probably a full range. You can choose the sampling that you want, and you can either do a relative range or you can do a fixed range if that makes more sense for your experiment. And you're basically going to use the single channel that you have in your channel tab that's identified as your focus reference, which is always blue, which is the secret reason that that's been blue all along. And you're just going to use the 48 channel to be able to quickly move through a Z stack to be able to identify, in this case, the brightest plane. And that will be the center of your Z stack, or that will be the plane that you image on. Now, for some things that works great. For a lot of things, you have a thick sample where it's not clear that the brightest spot is really the middle that you want. And so software autofocus can sometimes be helpful, but it takes some time and it can lie to you, or it can give you the wrong answer. It's very useful when you're trying to look for something like cells that are migrating in a 3D gel, for example, over time, where something like definite focus or something like your fixed positions or support points aren't going to help you. So the time I would think of working with something like software autofocus is where you have sparse cells migrating in a 3D gel, let's say. The definite focus, as we've mentioned, this is a cover slip focusing mechanism. So it will find your cover slip, and then you can assign a set distance off of the cover slip for the focal position that you want. So it'll always find the position, apply the offset, and image at that point. So especially, again, for cells on a cover slip where they're all the same distance or the same thickness or the monolayer is the same height, this is a great way to set things up. Definite focus doesn't help if things are moving away from the cover slip. And it doesn't help if you have a tissue section where it's not flat and it's not the same distance from the cover slip everywhere. Definite focus especially is really good to work with when you're doing time series. And it's really good to use in combination with your support points or with your position list when you're doing a time series. And so in these kinds of situations, you might decide that you want to honor the positions that you created in the first place, because that's why you did it. And then you might want to update and adapt that focus position using definite focus as an additional action. And when we do it like this, we're updating every time point. So basically imagine that your sample is drifting in Z over time, even though we've got incubation going and everything else, it can happen. And so this is going to allow us to keep different Z positions for all of our positions that we care about, but then we're going to update them all equally for using this definite focus update that we do at the beginning. So if we do this every single time point, it's going to go to your first position. It's going to figure out how far it moved, and it's going to apply that difference to all of your other positions as well. So in situations where everything is moving out of focus at the same rate, which is usually the case on a microscope, this does a very nice job of basically keeping up with those focus drifts over time. Those are the main ones that you might use, and I'm not going to, for now, get into the fact that there are many other ways that we can use this. I will mention that in the folder that I left you on the desktop, the Zeiss literature here, I should have one of these listed for working with different focal positions, and I don't see it here, so I'm going to make sure that I add it. But there is a document that I'm going to provide you. It's about 43 pages or something like that, I think. So it's pretty comprehensive, and it goes through all the different methods that you might want to use. And basically, this kind of flexibility in terms of the application is exactly the reason why I exist. So if you're looking at the different focus strategies that we've talked about, if you're trying to implement them and if they're not working, that's exactly the time to reach out to me and say, look, I want to try to set this up. Even before you spend any time trying to do that, it's a great opportunity to reach out to me, say, this is the experiment that I want to do. And hopefully in a heartbeat, I can tell you what kind of focus strategy is going to work best for that particular workflow. All right. There we go. So this focus strategy guide, again, really comprehensive, gives you a description of how every single one of these works. It gives you an example of, gives you a description of all of the different buttons and tools that you can work with as well. It gives you some advice, and then it gives you a few different specific examples. And so at the very end of this, you have sort of a decision tree that will guide you through what you might want to do. And again, specific examples based on real life type things where real life type examples that are pretty common generally. So Petri dish type things, multi-position, 96-well plates, that kind of thing. So hopefully that will be helpful as well. That kind of decision tree at the very end of this is effectively what this optimized focus strategy is designed to do. So to go through this quickly before we wrap up this section of the training, you can see that again, what this is going to do is this is going to open a wizard that will guide me through setting up this entire setup. So the first thing that it lets me do is it lets me choose which channel I want to use as reference. It tells me what dimensions I had activated in the experiment in the first place. And if I want help, it'll give me a description of what all of these different things are. Again, kind of like that little arrow tool that I showed you at the very top. So it kind of shows you, a description of what this window is describing. And if we go to next, you can say, I have to set focus manually, or I want to use software autofocus, or I want to use definite focus too, if I can. And then you can choose, basically just walks you through everything. Are you imaging clustered together? Are you looking at a large continuous area? Are you spread out over an entire sample carrier? What kind of carrier do you have? And from there, and it gives you a little description on the right-hand side as well, basically of what the decision that you're making is going to mean in the long run. Tells me that I can adapt the focus over time. Tells me that I can use either definite focus or software autofocus. It's a little bit much, honestly. So this is the reason why I think if you know how to use the tool window, it might be a little bit easier. But if you want to, you can read through all of these things, answer the questions, and it will basically assign you a focus strategy based on what you have described and requested. So it's just kind of a very verbose way to basically walk through this entire tool window. How's everybody doing?
I actually had a quick question that just came to me.
Sure.
These PDFs and documents you have seem pretty useful, but I'd love to be able to read them when I'm not on the clock.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for you to share those with us after the session?
Absolutely. I mean, do you have like a shared drive or resource for this kind of thing? Or, I mean, we can either do this through the core, or, I mean, if I set up something like a OneDrive link, I would really just leave it. I mean, they're all on the system computer, so you could technically pull them off anytime, I think. Otherwise, if I set up a OneDrive link, I would probably share it with Cassandra and Brandon, and they could make it available to you, or they can just copy it from here.
Yeah, we can put these on Google Drive and then send links that everybody with the link.
That'd be awesome. I'd appreciate that.
The documents. Yeah, we can do that.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad. I find them really helpful. So I'm glad that you're interested, and hope you don't have to do it on the weekend or something. But yeah, they're quite helpful. All right. Well, I guess if there's no other questions, we are scheduled for a short 15-minute break to stretch your legs, get some coffee, and we'll put the carrier back to use this afternoon, and we'll pick up with AreaScan once everyone's back.